we want to start with one of these critical issues that is, if significantly undercovered in many ways, but also I think covered out of context often, and that is the ongoing conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A lot happening there, and because of that, we are quite honored to have with us here on the show once again Kambale Musavuli, who's an analyst with the Center for Research on the Congo-Kinshasa. Kambale, as always, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, we've got some sort of breaking news here out of Doha, Qatar, where the two sides between Rwanda and the DRC have now agreed to a ceasefire until their talks on something more permanent are concluded. So I guess I'm curious your take on this, Kambale. I feel like we've kind of heard this a lot going all the way back to 2021. There's sort of constant conversation about ceasefires, and they seem to not fully hold. So does this seem more durable to you, or what's happening here?
As long as any peace negotiation in the DRC does not include justice, this is a temporary solution to a larger problem. We're talking about thousands of people who have been massacred just this year. The government numbers is all the way up to 9,000. The conservative numbers are 3,000. So whenever we're even talking about the ceasefire and peace deals, what they are telling the Congolese is that their lives do not matter, right? They can be massacred, they can be killed, and no one will be held to account. So that's really the context to look into that. Another element to think about is for peace in DRC, it's very strange that Doha, Qatar, is the place that will actually negotiate a peace deal. So everyone is very surprised. Why are Congolese and Rwandans, particularly the president of Rwanda, so in love with the emir of Qatar? It's clear. Qatar has billions of dollars invested in the region, particularly in Rwanda and in DRC. In Rwanda, for example, Qatar owns 49% of Rwanda National Airline called Rwandair. Beyond that, the new international airport being built in the outskirts of Kigali, the capital city of Rwanda, is owned at 60% by Qatar, right? In DRC, the same thing is happening. 3 airports in DRC is being renovated, and Qatar will be doing the renovation from our main airport in the capital city of Kinshasa called Njili Airport to others around the country. And as well as a deep sea port being built that Qatar is interested in developing in DRC in the city of Banana. So I'm throwing all these facts simply to say that Qatar's investment in the region is at stake at the moment. And no matter what negotiations took place on the African continent, be it with Angola, be it at the African Union, the belligerents did not listen. They had to listen to the Emir of Qatar to come to the table and to come to a ceasefire. And as I continue to say, if there is no clause on justice, on holding people to account for the crimes taking place in DRC, in a few months, few years from now, we will unfortunately see another rise of conflict in DRC.
Well, I'm glad you laid that out because, it does seem like in the background there's a lot happening that certainly makes me wonder, how serious Rwanda is about this. We've seen former President Kabila travel to Goma. He's been rumored to have been in Kigali along with these other opposition leaders. And it almost feels to me, and maybe I'm just, speculating here, but that there's a preparation here for maybe a deeper operation to try to, really influence the politics of the Congo and perhaps even take over through various proxies, and it almost feels like a pause in the fighting just helps, solidify those who have plans to either carve up the DRC or try to take control of it directly.
That is true, and we've seen, as you pointed out earlier, we've seen this before. The movement of President Kabila, the former president of the DRC, into the eastern part of the Congo, particularly visiting Rwanda, visiting Uganda, and also a few other African countries. He was in South Africa, and he's been residing in Zimbabwe, if I'm not mistaken. But he's been very, very diplomatically engaged in presenting himself as the solution for the Congo. And it's quite obvious why. He wants to be part of the political scene in DRC. And why? He's a very young man. He became president at the age of 29, even though he's had already 2 presidential terms, and the Congolese constitution doesn't allow him to have a 3rd term. He sees this moment as a perfect moment to participate in what the Congolese government called the national dialogue, so they could be part of that. And because of, again, on the DRC side, the president of the Congo He's definitely not someone who represents the will of the Congolese, who also has been trying to change the constitution so they could run for a third term. That would allow also Kabila to come into this political game being played in front of the Congolese. So I'm not surprised by his movement. It is quite possible that there is a larger strategy around what is happening. But there are also other factors, even beyond what Kabila is doing, particularly even what the United States is doing in DRC, that also has to be taken into a larger context of the global struggle, or should say, the global competition between the United States and China on the African continent.
You know, I'm really glad you raised that, because obviously this has been another big topic, which is this, you know, at least discussed mineral deal that the United States and DRC may sign, and that allegedly the DRC government has been pushing the United States, which is coming, interestingly enough, at the same time the SADC meeting was considering like trying to make it easy as possible to get goods out of the Congo. So I mean, talk to us about that, because I feel like there's a lot of rumors swirling around this and not a lot of solid information.
You know, the DRC for the foreseeable future is going to be central to the fourth industrial revolution. And this so-called revolution is really based in a very fast, high pace of development of technology. So we're talking about drone technology, we're talking about surveillance technology, we're even talking about artificial intelligence. All these new technologies will need minerals from DRC, from coltan to lithium to cobalt, and Congo has quite a lot of these minerals. It's #1 producer of cobalt in the world. So from that context, and looking into now what has unfolded in DRC for the past decade, the US has really lost its foothold in the control of Congo's wealth, where they've mostly used indirectly the illegal pilfering of Congo's resources to have access to it, but the direct exploitation of Congo's minerals at the moment, according to the Ministry of Mine of the DRC, is that 80% of critical minerals in DRC are Chinese mined. Not because they put a gun on the head of the Congolese, not because they came and stole minerals or armed rebel groups, because they had deals where they purchased these mines legally through different channels. And we can argue about the clause of the contract, but it's important to know how China today control 80% of these mines. But this is a threat to the United States. It's a threat to the United States when you have a US president waging a tariff wars when they don't have cobalt, and when they're saying that we're not getting anything from China, when they don't have the reserve of lithium necessary to compete. And the place where they need that will be DRC. And the Congolese government, the compradors in DRC, understand that. So they're playing a very dirty game. They're playing a game where they are wagering Congo's minerals in exchange for peace and stability. That action actually erased U.S. history in the DRC for the past 15 years, right? Even I could argue for the past 30 years since the conflict started in DRC. It pretty much makes the U.S. as a savior in DRC. It makes them become stakeholder at peace when they're actually the arsonists. They are the ones that have caused the conflict. They supported their allies on the continent, Rwanda and Uganda, into their invasions of DRC. So by the DRC is now putting that into perspective, it reminds me of what happened in the 60s, right? After the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, a strong man named Mobutu took control of the Congo. And the reason why the US supported him from 65 to 1997 when he was deposed is because he actually gave the US access to critical minerals, one of them being cobalt, during the so-called Cold War back then. So Tshisekedi is playing the same card. If they are successful, it appears to be that the U.S. is very interested into this deal. They send the Lebanese-American Boulos into the DRC, the special advisor for Africa at the State Department, to negotiate these things, the mineral deal in exchange for security. And it appears to be advancing. And we're hearing names that we've heard in Iraq, like, Eric Prince coming in, also trying to be part of the solution. And it's quite fascinating as Eric Prince is now being mentioned as part of the security to mineral deal in DRC. No one is making the same argument as they've made around Wagner, right? Whenever Wagner was around on the African continent helping different countries in stability, there was this Russian scare. But right now, with Eric Prince, the billionaire American owner of Blackwater is coming to the DRC for peace. So looking at that, we know that the US want the minerals. They are interested in it. But for us Congolese, our struggle to control our wealth continues. The civil society on the ground, especially in the Katanga province, already put out a statement stating they are against this deal. That story needs to be out more because the press does not cover that the Congolese are against this deal. And we know that if we have relative peace brought in, we still have to hold to account our compradors and also continue to say, just as Lumumba has told us, that our minerals are not for the West, for the exporters. The minerals of the Congo is for the Congolese people. It has to be harnessed and exploited for the benefit of the Congolese people so that we can have peace and prosperity and stability.
I think that's such a great point, and it brings me to an important question about how do we understand the mineral deal, because of course, there's a certain subset of people that are sort of saying, oh, everyone was saying that Rwanda is backed by the West, but now you can see it's really DRC. But I mean, for the US to even really be able to offer security to the DRC in this context, it seems to really sort of speak to the point that you've made very well many, many different times, that they have the ability to control what Rwanda is doing when they choose to do so.
Indeed, and they are the country that arms them, right? The United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union arm Rwanda, arms Uganda. These two countries cannot do what they do in the DRC without their approval. They know the military stockpile they have. They know the intelligence capacity that they have. This is why they go as far as condemnation. Even for this deal, when we are hearing from the U.S. government the statement that Rwanda should remove its troops on the ground, it's still a statement, but they do have the evidence that Rwandan soldiers are there. So this deal, in my view, is not going to benefit the Congolese people. It's not even going to benefit the American people. It's going to benefit the elite of the United States. The Elon Musk and others who are developing, the Lockheed Martin and other companies who are making these tools of wars around the world. Right? They're the ones who are going to benefit. So it's so essential that at this critical juncture, that the people of the United States who want peace and stability in the world, who want justice in the world, to unite with organizers, working people of the world who are also fighting the same system. But another point that I also want to make, because it's so important when we're thinking about the United States, to understand that they can support Rwanda and they can support Uganda and they also can support the Congo, speaking about the elite of the countries, that they always play outside to make sure that no matter what happens, they still have control. But at this moment, it's quite fascinating what is happening, right? That the Trump administration is cutting back on diplomacy, the African diplomacy on the African continent, where they want to even remove the Department of African Affairs. I think that's what was mentioned on the New York Times a few days ago. But what was fascinating, even though that diplomatically want to reshape the Department of State, is not talking about stopping Africa. Right. So that's also in that context to look at the minerals deal in DRC. How can it be that the country that have provided the arms to Rwanda and Uganda, and they have brought in the deaths of millions, now bring their military to bring peace and stability in DRC? What would that mean for the African continent? That we will say we do not need another armed military solution from the United States. What we really need is for the United States to disengage from the politics of the African continent, for the politics of DRC, so that the Congolese people can decide for themselves what the future should be.
No, I think that's a critically important point in terms of how all of this is playing out. And I guess I just want to ask you finally here, seeing how, and you've already laid out why Qatar is involved and how they were able to bring people to the table. I mean, how does that reflect on, SADC as an entity which tried to make a big intervention here, EAC which tried to make a big intervention here? I mean, it seems in and of itself that says something about the sort of state of many of these, so-called Pan-African entities that are supposed to be bringing together regional powers.
It clearly shows that some of our so-called Pan-African institutions on the African continent are weak. If the African Union could not resolve to bring an end to the conflict in DRC with all the head of states, part of the African Union, that clearly tells you why even in the Sahel, the countries of Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso have created a new alliance because they're seeing that the founding fathers and mothers of Pan-Africanism have laid out a plan for a unity on the African continent, which is not being implemented. The same thing is true for SADC, right? SADC and EAC, these regional bodies, have been in the Congo mostly because of also hegemonic bloc's interest, right? South Africa, which is one of the biggest countries in terms of political power in SADC, has financial interest, economic interest in the DRC. So it's critical for them to also have a say in the DRC. Same is true with the EAC, right? When we think about Kenya, the former deputy president of Kenya, about a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, even mentioned on national TV in Kenya that the reason why EAC has been inadequate to address the situation in Congo, of course, I'm paraphrasing what he said, is that the president of Kenya, Ruto, he alleged that he's implicated in the gold deals, gold exploitation in DRC. So to even hear that in Kenya and all across the continent now, we have to be clear that many of the African countries have leaders who do not represent the interests of the people. So class struggle is still ongoing on the African continent. Right now, our biggest battle on the continent is to rid ourselves of our compradors, who are in power, and sometimes they are actually placed by Western powers. So when we understand that, and we see that the compradors, depending on who they are dealing with, they will make deals to benefiting their class, then we know we have to unite with the working people of Africa and follow the lead of our brothers and sisters in the Sahel, who understands that they must defeat imperialism, and that they called imperialism very well. They knew who it was. They say that the US military is imperialism. France CFA, the currency controlled by France's imperialism. They must leave with their soldiers out of our country, and we must build a new union with principles to benefit our countries. But the other bodies on the continent are not following suit. So it's up to the African people and the allies who believe in a free and united and Pan-African continent to unite with us as we fight to bring an end to the crisis in the Congo, but to bring the true Pan-African dream of the founding fathers and mothers of Pan-Africanism, be Nkrumah, Lumumba, Nasser, and others who fought for independence on the African continent.
Well, as always, Kambale, we really appreciate you joining us and sorting through it all. Kambale Musavuli, an analyst with the Center for Research on Congo-Kinshasa, thank you so much for some of your time here in the Freedom Side.
Thank you.